A chance of forever. James Calloway wasn't the kind of man who believed in fate. He had spent the better part of his 32 years grounding himself in practicalities, working as a data analyst for a tech firm in Seattle. His life revolved around numbers, trends, and predictable outcomes. It was a life of stability, if not monotony. James was good at his job and respected by his colleagues, but outside of work, he had little to fill his time. His relationships had been fleeting, his hobbies uninspiring, and his daily routine as regular as clockwork. Every morning he walked the same route to his favorite coffee shop, ordered a black coffee with 2 sugars, and then headed to work. Every evening he returned to his modest apartment, ate dinner alone, and either read a book or scrolled through streaming services looking for something to watch. His weekends weren't much different, aside from the occasional hike or an attempt to revive his neglected guitar skills. It wasn't that James disliked his life, it was just predictable. He often wondered if this was all there was. The idea of finding someone to share his life with felt more like a theoretical possibility than an achievable goal. But all of that changed on an ordinary Tuesday in November. It started with a missed bus. James had been running late, his phone alarm failing him for the first time in years. As he rushed out of his apartment, the brisk autumn air stung his face, and he could see the bus pulling away from the corner. "Perfect," he muttered under his breath, adjusting his coat and deciding to walk to the nearest coffee shop instead of his usual one. The shop he stumbled into was smaller than his regular haunt, with mismatched furniture and the faint smell of cinnamon in the air. A handwritten chalkboard menu hung above the counter, and the barista greeted him with a cheerful smile that was just a touch too early morning perky. James ordered his coffee, took a seat by the window, and pulled out his phone. As he scrolled through emails, a sudden movement caught his eye. She was standing near the bulletin board by the entrance, pinning a brightly colored flyer amidst the clutter of advertisements and community notices. She wore a long tan trench coat over a red scarf that framed her face, her dark curls spilling over her shoulders. She seemed focused on her task, biting her lower lip as she adjusted the flyer to make sure it was straight. James wasn't the kind of man who believed in love at first sight, but something about her made the air around him feel different. He couldn't look away. She turned, her eyes scanning the room, and for a brief moment their gazes met. Her lips curved into a small, polite smile before she grabbed her coffee and walked out the door. James blinked as if waking from a trance. He had no idea who she was, but he felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that he had to know more. The flyer she had posted was still swaying slightly on the bulletin board. James hesitated for a moment before standing and walking over. The flyer read, "Volunteer needed for Community Center Project. Help us bring stories to life." It went on to describe a program at the local community center where volunteers would assist in reading and storytelling sessions for children. At the bottom of the flyer was a name, Sofia Delgado, and a contact email. James wasn't entirely sure what compelled him to snap a picture of the flyer. It wasn't like him to volunteer, much less for something that involved public speaking. But later that day, as he stared at the photo on his phone, he typed out a quick email expressing interest and hit send before he could overthink it. 2 days later, James found himself standing awkwardly in the brightly lit community center, surrounded by cheerful posters and the sound of children's laughter echoing down the halls. He had received a warm reply from Sophia, inviting him to an orientation session. He wasn't sure what he expected, but when she walked into the room, clipboard in hand and a warm smile on her face, his breath caught in his throat. She looked just as radiant as she had in the coffee shop, her energy filling the room. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice soft but confident. "Thank you so much for volunteering. This program means a lot to the kids, and we couldn't do it without people like you." James wasn't sure if she noticed him specifically during the session, but he found himself hanging on her every word. She had an easy way of connecting with people, her passion for the program evident in every gesture and expression. Over the next few weeks, James threw himself into the volunteer work. At first, it was to impress Sophia, but he quickly discovered how rewarding it was to read to the kids and see their eyes light up with wonder. He helped them act out scenes from their favorite books, built cardboard castles for their storytelling sessions, and even started coming up with his own stories to share. Sophia, meanwhile, seemed to notice his enthusiasm. They often chatted after the sessions, exchanging ideas and laughing over the kids' antics. He learned that she had started the program as a way to give back to the community after finishing her master's degree in education. She was fiercely dedicated to the center and spoke about her work with a mix of determination and joy that James found captivating. One evening, after a particularly lively session, Sophia asked James if he'd like to grab a coffee. Surprised but thrilled, he agreed. They ended up at a cozy cafe a few blocks away, talking late into the night. Sophia told him about her childhood, how she had grown up in a big family where books were her escape from the chaos. James, in turn, opened up about his life, admitting that he had spent years feeling lost and uninspired. "You don't seem lost to me," Sophia said, her eyes meeting his. "You're here, making a difference. That counts for something." Her words stayed with him. As the weeks turned into months, James and Sophia grew closer. Their coffee dates became a regular occurrence, and James found himself looking forward to their time together more than anything else. Sophia had a way of making even the simplest moments feel extraordinary. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, James worked up the courage to tell her how he felt. The city lights reflected off the water, casting a warm glow over everything. "Sophia," he began, his heart pounding, "I don't know how to say this without sounding like a cliché, but you've changed my life. I've never met anyone like you, and I think I'm falling for you." She stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he feared he had ruined everything. But then she smiled, stepping closer. "You're not a cliché, James. You're one of the most genuine people I've ever met. And I feel the same way." Relief and joy washed over him as she leaned in, and their first kiss felt like the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Their relationship blossomed, each day bringing new discoveries and shared dreams. James had always thought of love as something distant, something reserved for other people. But with Sophia, it felt natural, as if they had been meant to find each other all along. The randomness of their meeting, the missed bus, the flyer on the bulletin board, no longer felt like coincidence. It felt like destiny. Years later, as they stood together on their wedding day, surrounded by family and friends, James couldn't help but marvel at how one ordinary day had changed his life forever. Because sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the greatest love stories. The end